This is Red America Radio, straight up conservative talk for today's red-blooded American, with the host of Eye on DC and Eye on South Florida's Karen Turk. Making radio great again. Red America Radio.
And welcome back to another week of Red America Radio. Great to catch up with everybody. We've got a lot of exciting things lined up today. You know, it's almost the start of a new year. 2019 is right around the corner, and there's certainly been no shortage of news this week or, you know, for that matter, this whole year. And we're going to be doing a little recap today of the year's news and our weekly news, and also catching up with our state attorney in Palm Beach County, Dave Arenberg, who's going to give us a state of the county a little bit later on in the show. And without further ado, I want to introduce the Jedi Master of News, the co-founder of Populous Wire. I've got Ben Kenobi in the studio with me today. Hey, Ben.
Hey, good morning, Karen.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing good. How about you?
Good. I'm great. You know, it's been a busy news week, even with the holidays.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing Republicans start to quasi-endorse these red flag gun laws. We're seeing RGB ruling from the bench. It has been a crazy news cycle.
Yeah, the RGB thing's been blowing up online for me. I know you and I have been going back a little bit back and forth on Facebook with some of these people that are real upset with me for posting that I don't think that she's fit to rule from a hospital bed. Who knows what drugs she's taking, what prescription she's on.
It's crazy because it's such a non-controversial thing. It'd be like, if you'd think if you were in court, you wouldn't want your judge ruling from the hospital bed if you were trying to pay a parking ticket or something like, you know what I mean? It's such a non-controversial statement to say you want a judge to be in front of you at the bench when they make rulings. But
you know, I kind of thought it was a no big deal statement. I actually thought that it was a pretty logical statement. You know, why would I want anybody ruling from a hospital bed? But apparently now, you know, as usual, I'm getting pinned as, you know, evil online because, you know, she's an old lady and how dare I?
Michael Savage has been saying it's just mass hysteria, which is every little thing. It's been really interesting just to watch some of this.
What's your prediction? What's going to happen with this?
I've been listening to a lot of Aaron Coulter lately, and I have a pretty fatalist view of all this stuff. You know, what I would have to say, and a lot of conservatives probably wouldn't want to hear this. A lot of the MAGA types wouldn't want to hear this, but, you know, in my view, we've already lost in a lot of ways. I just mentioned briefly that red flag gun laws. We got people like Marco Rubio ready to endorse something like that, where they can basically just confiscate. The demographics are changing. You know, even down here in Texas. That Beto race is way too close, and I'm not sure Texas is going to make it another 5 years with the California invasion. So I would say conservatives may not want to hear this, but it's going to be hard to get Republicans elected in the next 5 years. And the only reason I'm so fatalistic is just because I want to let people know, you know, it's time to be more active, you know. It's one of the reasons we started Populous Wire.
Yeah, I mean, so is that your tip for the new year? Because you were going down a road there that was a little bit negative. I mean, are you thinking for 2019 we just have to get more motivated as Republicans and get out there? I mean, is that what you're seeing?
Well, I think there's 3 areas we really need to fix. The internet censorship, we got to get the ball rolling on that, and that's going to have to come from the executive. Without that, I mean, that's one of the ways Donald Trump got elected. So without the internet, without the Facebook being freed, without the censorship of people like Gavin McInnes and Alex Jones, love him or hate him, it's censorship. And without freeing some of those voices, I don't know if we stand a chance, but I do think Donald Trump will make it through 2020. But future elections, I worry about the censorship. That's a big one. There's a couple other
it's a huge
things I worry
one.
about too.
Yeah, we had Roger on the show recently, and, you know, Roger Stone and Alex Jones stormed Capitol Hill, and, you know, we're shouting that Google was evil from what I understand, you know, and it's all over the censorship thing, and I can tell you that I've experienced it, just little old me online. So, you know, it's got to be happening. What are we seeing with Populist? I mean, is that something that's affecting us at Populous Wire also?
I mean, yeah, like in 2017, we reached 100 million. It's 2018, the end of it, and we're looking, I think we only hit about 25 million this year. So you can tell that there's definitely a filter on some of the biggest pages. Our reach is being cut in almost over half. Yeah, even the Ben Shapiro, whose show is probably one of the most popular, he even said he's been experiencing cuts.
Wow.
But yeah, like you said, you know, people in Congress, you talk to them about censorship and they just go dumb. They're like, no one's getting censored. Even the Republicans, it's strange the Republicans don't realize that it's happening to people like you, like me. It's not just Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes. It's lots of people. It's average people are getting censored.
So what's the answer? How do we get our voice heard?
I don't know. The only thing I can think of is calling your congressman. I called the Cruz office, and they were aware of it. But until we let our voices be heard loud and clear, I don't see anything getting done, really. So, and I almost think it has to come from the top. It's going to have to be something Donald's going to have to do, because I don't see Congress making a move on it, especially with this new batch coming in.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see. I mean, it remains to be seen. We're at the top of the new year, getting ready to start off 2019. Great to have you with me, Ben Kenobi. And we'll catch up with you online at Populist Wire.
Thanks a lot, Karen.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And we'll be right back with Red America Radio after this.
Still using lamestream media for news? Stop being a victim to clickbait and visit Populist Wire. They're delivering real news to over 100 million people a year. Visit Populist Wire on Facebook or at populistwire.com.
Did you know that veterans and their families may be entitled to $24K a year to cover age-related expenses? Visit TurkLawGroup.com to find out more and get better care to age in place. Serving those who've served. Turk Law Group.
The NFRW, National Federation of Republican Women, brings together conservative women and raises their voices all over America. Join our movement, get involved in your local federation, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
So welcome back to Red America Radio. Next up, we have the state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. And a little known fact about Dave Arenberg, he was actually the youngest member and served in the Florida Senate for, I believe, 8 years. And he happens to be my favorite Democrat in Palm Beach County, or at least one of my favorite Democrats in Palm Beach County. But I wanted to have Dave come on today and talk a little bit about the state of the county and kind of give us an update for 2019. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks for having me on, Karen. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And the strides that we've seen over the past year, I think, for our county have really been amazing. You're doing a great job.
Hey, thank you. You know, it's a team effort. I'm fortunate to have an amazing team of prosecutors and staff here at the state attorney's office, and I get to work with Sheriff Bradshaw, his amazing team over at PBSO, and really all the law enforcement officers, all the police chiefs and law enforcement officers of our county. They really take their job seriously, and they do it well. And we've worked closely together on a number of issues, and the one that's really been the top priority in our office has been the opioid crisis, because there's nothing that kills more people every day than opioids. We're talking about 136 people every day nationally who die during this crisis. We have about 14 people every day in Florida.
Unbelievable.
And Palm Beach County had been ground zero because we had more drug rehab centers than any other county in Florida, maybe any other place in the country, but unfortunately, there were corrupt actors who infiltrated the industry, and they put up all these rogue sober homes around the county that were just warehousing people in like nothing more than flop houses, and shuttling back and forth to rehab and getting paid illegally with kickbacks and insurance fraud. And we helped clean up the industry, and that's something I'm very proud of. And as a result, the number of opioid overdose deaths in Palm Beach County in the first 9 months of this year, it was actually, I'm going to take it to the first 11 months. We have new data from up to November, show a 38% decrease in the opioid overdose deaths over the same period of last year.
Wow. And do you think that that's because of the crackdown that you've made on these sober homes? Because really, to watch what's happened over 2018, and anybody that's been following what's gone on in our county, where we were last year compared to this year, it's striking to me. So do you feel that was the main contributing factor, these sober homes?
I think the crackdown was an important factor. I think another factor was that the city of Delray Beach has the police department that has a woman named Ariana Ciancio, and she is assigned to work with the police to go and find those who overdose, and then instead of just releasing them into the community after they overdose, only to overdose again and again and again, now they get follow-up services. And so, back before we have these pilot projects, we had situations where someone would overdose, then get released from the emergency room, only to overdose again, sometimes in the hospital's own parking lot. And so we are very fortunate that it's a team effort. The crackdown definitely had a major impact. I mean, we were like the leader in the country when it came to what's called the Florida Shuffle, which is just when you shuffle people in and out of rehab just to milk them for their insurance benefits, and then they leave only in an ambulance or body bag. Now, we had a huge problem, but we have largely cleaned up the industry. with the help of legitimate players in the industry and with the help of law enforcement, and we've made 66 arrests since October of 2016, and more to come. And yes, it's a very different place now here in Palm Beach County than it was a year ago. We have really turned the corner, and I think that next year is going to be even better.
Wow, I hope so. I mean, and to see us, on kind of like the national stage, I read somewhere this week that the leading cause of death for people in my age group is no longer car accidents or whatever it was, or cancer. It's now opioids.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's awful.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But to see such an impact here, in Palm Beach County for the positive, I think really, looking forward to 2019, hopefully it's going to continue on that upswing. Where do we stand on kind of a national stage as far as Florida and Palm Beach County compared to the rest of the country with this problem?
Well, while we are experiencing a near 40% decrease in the number of opioid overdose deaths, during the same period, the rest of the country has experienced around a 2.3% decrease. So we are far exceeding the rest of the country. And I think it's in part because of our crackdown. I don't know of any other state attorney's office around the country that has the same model that we have here now. Others are replicating it, and we're encouraging them to. We're training other law enforcement agencies. We've trained prosecutors from places as far away as Orange County. But we think that this problem of rogue sober homes, of patient brokering and insurance fraud that goes on within some elements of the drug rehab community, that as it leaves Palm Beach County, it is moving to other places that are less prepared for this. And so they need to get up to speed. They need to follow what we're doing because they can do this and they can have the same results.
And doesn't this have an impact overall? I mean, obviously, as a state attorney, you're prosecuting crimes. I mean, what kind of effect do these sober homes and this opioid epidemic have on the other crime rates in a city like Delray Beach or any of the other cities in our county?
Well, whenever you have people who are dependent on drugs, that's going to lead to other crimes because the money runs out, and then where are they going to get the money for drugs? And when you have rogue treatment centers that are in business just to keep people in an endless cycle of rehab as opposed to recovery, then that's part of the problem. And then you have to clean up the industry, and we have done that largely, but it does lead to more crimes, property crimes. It leads to theft. It leads, obviously, drugs are its own crime.
Yeah.
Drug trafficking is its own crime. And although our county has been very understanding when it comes to people who are battling addiction. We have drug courts, we have extensive rehab, but when it comes to those who traffic, those individuals are not addicts. Generally, they are business people. They're business people who make their living off of the backs of individuals who have the brain disease of addiction. And it's disgusting, and it needs to stop, and we treat them very harshly. Drug trafficking is subject to mandatory minimums. It's subject to very harsh sentencing. And rightly so, because they are taking advantage of people at the lowest stages of their lives.
Well, and this drug epidemic, I mean, is something that crosses all these demographic lines, though. It's kind of unlike anything we've ever seen before, because if you look at, the 80s and the crack epidemic and cocaine and other things, I don't think that the audience was the same. Like, this opioid thing is just so huge that I read somewhere that it impacts, that 5 people to the person who's the addict. So you're talking about something that affects like 85 to 90% of the population in some connection to a family member, a friend, a coworker, somebody who's addicted to these drugs. And I think this is the first time we've seen this in America.
Yeah, it cuts across every socioeconomic group. And this crisis is man-made. It's been years in the making. It was preventable. It started back in 1996 when OxyContin first hit the market. And so this opioid epidemic that we're facing was created by individuals in the drug pharmaceutical industry, some professional malpractice within the medical community who were pushing this stuff on people when they were not qualified to do so. So you had a combination of corporate malfeasance and professional greed and political apathy and regulatory failure all combined to create this unprecedented opioid epidemic that could have been prevented, but unfortunately now we're dealing with it, we're living with it, and we have to pick up the pieces. And so that's why I'm hoping that some of the lawsuits against the drug manufacturers and distributors will succeed. The truth will come out as more and more information comes out. You'll see that individuals who were involved with the pharmaceutical industry and drug distributors, they knew that this stuff was addictive. They knew this stuff was dangerous, and yet they continue to push it on to individuals and spread it throughout the country just to make money.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. And there's another topic that's kind of a hot topic for me. Actually, on the second half of the show today, I have somebody coming on who actually is a convicted felon who is now advocating for felons' voting rights. And he made up a very interesting point yesterday when we spoke. And I was talking to him a little bit, and he said to me, you got to realize that these felons are really a different demographic than they were years ago, too, because you got to factor in the opioid epidemic. And he's actually going to come on and talk about, felons' rights to vote and how a lot of these people that are currently in prison are people who had opioid addictions, including him.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're having him on. That's great, Karen, because, that measure, Amendment 4, passed overwhelmingly. Mm-hmm. And the way it passed overwhelmingly is that it received support from both sides of the aisle. So this, even though it was interpreted by some as a very pro-democratic measure, it was supported by people on both sides of the aisle because Florida was really one of the only states that required permission from a cabinet with no standards to just get your voting rights back. When reality, if you want people to stay out of trouble after they get out of prison, you want them to get reintegrated into society. If you create a permanent subclass of people who will never become equal, who never will be able to get their life back, no matter how much they pay their debt to society, no matter how much restitution they paid, how much penance they have shown, then you're going to be asking for more crime. Mm-hmm. The best way to get people back out of a life of crime as a productive tax-paying member of society is to start treating them like a member of society and not in a subclass.
He said the most important thing to him, and I mean, he was a former county commissioner. He was acquitted on murder charges, but faced some other felony charges and spent some time in prison. And, he's a Republican, and he's been an outspoken Republican for a long time, even prior to his personal issues and problems that he had. And he actually really changed my opinion because I had looked at this amendment before, and I was not for the amendment. I felt that there was a process in place to restore the rights. There were, 40% of the people that felt the way I did, but, 60 some odd percent or whatever that final number was, voted for this amendment. So now here we are. What do we do that's positive with it? And he really changed my opinion when I talked to him about it because he said that was the most important thing to me because, there were a lot of stuff that I couldn't get back. But that was something that I could get back that I needed to have in my life that was important to me. And, we're earning 1 million voters with Amendment 4. So we got to get on the shtick. And especially for Republicans, I think it's important to, be able to motivate them to understand our party and understand the agendas.
Yeah, and right, that's right. I mean, really, these voters are fair game, and that's why it's important that people look at this as not just a partisan issue. That this was meant to, get one side elected, but really it's just a question of fairness of also just doing what the rest of the country has been doing for years and years, and also an issue of just creating a safer community. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, as state attorney, that you create a safer community by giving people hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And once someone is let out for whatever crime they committed, except for murder or sexual like rape or sexual assault, if for all the other crimes, once they get let out, once they pay their debt to society, once they pay restitution, then they should be able to get back into society and stay out of trouble and be a productive tax-paying citizen. That's the goal of all of us, and I think that is encouraged when you allow people to start getting their civil rights back, including the right to vote.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we're going to catch up with you every couple of weeks. We're going to need some updates as 2019 unfolds. I look forward to having a really productive year like you had last year. And thanks for your commitment to our community. Anybody who doesn't know you personally, I've known you for a long time. You helped me out personally when you were a state senator. And I've told this story a million times. I couldn't believe when I called you and you answered the phone and you followed through on a promise. And you've been really dedicated. And we love having you here. So my favorite Democrat, Dave Arenberg.
Thanks so much, Karen.
You're so welcome.
And Happy New Year to you and all your listeners.
Happy New Year. And we'll be right back with Red America Radio after this.
The NFRW, National Federation of Republican Women, brings together conservative women and raises their voices all over America. Join our movement. Get involved in your local federation and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Did you know that veterans and their families may be entitled to $24K a year to cover age-related expenses? Visit TurkLawGroup.com to find out more and get better care to age in place. Serving those who've served. Turk Law Group.
Still using lamestream media for news? Stop being a victim to clickbait and visit Populist Wire. They're delivering real news to over 100 million people a year. Visit Populist Wire on Facebook or at populistwire.com.
And welcome back. We're back in our second half, and we were covering a really interesting topic for 2019 for everybody who's listening. 2019, 1 million Florida felons have earned the right to vote with Amendment 4 passing, and it's definitely going to make an impact on both the Republican and the Democratic Party. And we have a really interesting guest today. I have Stephen Nodine joining me, and he's actually the president and CEO of an initiative to rally Florida's voting felons, and the organization is called Florida's Second Chance Voters. And Stephen actually has his own personal story, and he speaks from experience. And, he's looking to really rally the Florida felon voting public and get them on the Republican page. So, Stephen, welcome.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. And I read a lot about your story and your background, which is extremely interesting. And I know you've served, as a former Mobile County Commissioner, and, you also had some personal issues and some things that actually served some time for some felonies.
Yes, I did. Unfortunately, I was wrongfully accused, but as anybody knows within the criminal justice system, you have to be taxed, if you will, and I was certainly sent to federal prison for 922G3, and that was testing positive for marijuana. And if they did that with everyone in America, I think probably 70% of the people would be filled in jails. But the long story short of it was I didn't know I was committing a crime, but I did, and I went and served my time in federal prison with Lord Conrad Black, who was the president of Holligers International. You might have read the article. So I took everything as a learning experience, but realized that once I was able to achieve, after serving my country and community for 27 years, once Florida was giving, through Amendment 4, the right to vote back to ex-felons who've completed their sentence, I was enthusiastic, and it made me feel like I was going to be part of the community again, because Florida, with the 63% approval of Amendment 4, allowed ex-felons who served their time, that did not commit murder or a violent crime or a sex crime, to have their rights back. And so I took the initiative, and being a lifelong Republican and serving 3 Republican presidents, I was awfully enthusiastic of getting back into being able to vote.
Well, you said to me it was like the most important thing to you. I mean, that was your entire professional life. I mean, at learning a little bit about you yesterday when we talked, your entire professional life was in politics.
Sure, and I loved it. I made personal mistakes in my life, and I had to pay for those. But I also know that I, served my community well, and it was, something that brought a lot of joy, not only the struggles that ex-felons have with trying to get a job, trying to get back integrated into society. The right to vote is so precious and gives us the ability to get back into the fold, to be a part of the community. I was just overwhelmed by the ability of going down to the Palm Beach County Supervisor Board of Elections and being able to register. But, of course, I ran into a few issues there.
Oh, that's shocking. Shocking for Palm Beach County.
Yeah, it is. But I finally received, I finally received my voter registration card, and now I'm eligible to vote. And my mission is, it's not only I could say everybody knows I'm a Republican. Everybody knows I'm still a Republican, even after everything I've been through. I just think the GOP has more to offer than the Democratic Party when it comes to ex-felons. And I can give you a litany of reasons why.
Do it.
One of them being, first and foremost, President Trump, supports the military enthusiastically and through his actions, providing funding, raises. People may not know this, but almost 52% of our armed forces are minorities. I also go to the First Step Act, which was just recently passed through a bipartisan measure, but it was headed by Jared Kushner, whose father is a convicted felon, and President Trump.
I didn't know that.
Also, yes, $100 billion. President Trump 2 weeks ago invested into minority neighborhoods, $100 billion invested into minority communities. Not one media outlet picked it up. And I can go on and on about why the GOP has more to offer the ex-felon as opposed to the Democratic Party. But I do see, some of my Republican brothers are concerned that having the 1.5 million ex-felons eligible to vote, of course, not all of them will probably register. You would think probably 300,000 to 200,000 may vote. But with that comes their families. when you go through what we've been through as an ex-felon, our families stick together. And it's a huge voting block that I do not want the GOP to just dismiss, thinking that the Democratic Party has it locked up. And I'll give you a couple numbers.
Well, and I told you, I think that's a common misconception. And I think until we really spoke and you kind of enlightened me a little bit, I thought about Amendment 4 being a negative for the GOP, and that possibly this was going to be, a million voters coming into our system that are going to vote on the Democratic ticket. And I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. I think a lot of people kind of looked at it and said, wait a second, this isn't going to be good for the GOP. Why is it good for the GOP?
Well, again, there's no doubt the numbers, 44% are going to vote Democrat, 14% are going to vote Republican, 33% are independent. And as you know, that those independents are what helped President Trump and the GOP capture Florida. So if you look at the numbers, if you don't go after that 33%, then you're just basically handing the 2020 election to the Democrats. Because out of those, if Governor Scott won by 10,000 votes in the Senate campaign, which I was part of the recount team, as you know, and Governor DeSantis won by 35,000 votes, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this one out. The numbers are not going to be with us if we don't go out there and show and prove to the ex-felon vote that this is what we have done. And President Trump and the GOP have done an outstanding job on criminal justice reform and actually trying to get people back into the system as opposed to the Democratic Party. Nothing against the Democratic Party, but they have talked and talked for almost 100 years with no reform and having all the power. The Republicans were able to pass this First Step Act with the help of Jared Kushner and President Trump. And I think it's the first step.
We'll definitely have you back on and catch back up with you and see what kind of progress we're making with this.
Thank you, Karen. I enjoy your show. You keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Stephen. Wrapping up another week at Red America Radio. Join us next week and stay tuned and catch up with me on Ion DC.